everybody? Welcome to week 3, episode 3, I should say, level 2. Super happy for you all to be joining us again on this Friday evening. I am super excited for this episode. As I talked about last week, I am having a guest this week. Last week I talked a little bit about my journey in video games and kind of what that pathway has really looked like for me. And so this week I have my partner in crime for a lot of the games that I play, my best friend, who we essentially play every single day together. So I have Bear Claw with me this week, and let's get him on the line in here. What's going on, Bear Claw?
Hi, enter player 2. Bear Claw has joined the game lobby.
Oh, I love that. Maybe that'll be a sound effect that I use in the future.
You're
Insert
welcome. You can
player
have that,
2.
yeah.
So we've been playing a lot together, through our lives and not through our lives over the last 7 years.
Seems like a lifetime.
Holy shit! Yeah, it seems like a long time. 7-8 years. It's been a minute. And I wanted to have you on this week's episode. I kind of talked to you a little bit about last week's episode, where I talked a little bit about my timeline, and I've kind of just talked to you about kind of this podcast as a whole, because as I talked about in the prologue, you are one of those individuals that really got me into thinking about doing a podcast. So how does it feel to not be hosting your own podcast but being on somebody else's?
It's definitely different. Yeah, you were on a couple of times. One was actually an episode about your streaming.
Mm-hmm.
So it definitely feels like this has come full circle, and I'm in the other chair. But yeah, I'm kind of expecting you to lead the conversation. So that's different for me because I'm the one doing leading usually on my podcast. So we'll see how this goes.
Yeah, and as I told you earlier, I really don't have a script. And as funny as me saying I don't have a script, I'm going to be completely transparent with the viewers out there. This is actually our second time going through having this conversation, because the first time we had this conversation, Franklin's side did not record the audio. So you might hear some awkward laughing and not necessarily rehearsed answers, but we've had a similar conversation before. We're going to try and switch it up a little bit, but
No, see, what I said the first time was gold, so I'm going to try my best to say the exact same thing
perfect.
Second time.
I wouldn't have it any other way. But how did you feel when I told you that it wasn't going to be scripted?
Oh, well, scripted.
In the sense that I don't have
likely
anything
getting
prepared.
scripted. Well, I was a little disappointed. They didn't have anything prepared because I would like to prepare a little bit myself.
Yeah.
But it is what it is.
Yeah, I just feel like our relationship allows us to just have conversation that flows, and I don't ever want this podcast to feel like it's this is going to be the same question that I ask every week, because I want to have genuine conversations with the people that I have on. So, yeah, that's kind of where I went with that approach. So obviously above your name in the podcast, you can't see this obviously, but you will when you go back and watch it. But
if I watch it,
if you watch it, fair enough. It's got your gamer tag, right? So BearClaw613. So
yes.
What's kind of the story behind BearClaw613?
Well, I don't really tell the story very often, just because I don't feel like it. I tell people, oh, it's such a long story, but it really isn't. I just don't feel like telling it. I'll touch on this later when I talk about my timeline, my gaming timeline. But I was kind of late to the game, no pun intended. So I didn't really get a gamer tag until I got the PS3 for the first time. Wasn't until 2011. Um, but in 2010, I got accepted to college, Oakland University, the Golden Grizzlies, and I was going to room with my friend, my childhood friend, Sean. You know him as the
Mm-hmm.
milkman. Um, and as you can see, I was always a superhero fan. So Sean and I decided when we go to Oakland, we're going to attend every athletic event and just be super fans.
Mm.
So we kind of came up with our own personas for that. I decided I was going to be Bear Claw, again, because we were the Golden Grizzlies.
Yeah.
And Sean was going to be my sidekick, the Kodiak Kid. and we actually had shirts made that said Bear Claw and Kodiak Kid. Um, and so when I got my PS3 in 2011, I had to come up with a gamer tag, obviously. And I was like, okay, let's go with Bear Claw. That was taken, so
Mm-hmm.
I was like, I guess I'll add 613 because that's my birthday. So, and it's kind of just stuck ever since then.
Huh. Yeah, I feel like I've never heard that story before today. Um, because I feel like I just never asked. I don't know. I don't
Yeah,
know.
people just assume that when I say my name's Bear Claw, they think I'm talking about the donut, and I let them
Mm,
think that because I like donuts, so
yeah,
that's fine.
bear claws are pretty good. So Kodiak Kid, never knew that Sean had a different alias.
Hmm.
Um,
It was
what
brief, but yeah.
what made that fall apart?
I don't know if we're really allowed to talk about it, but
Okay.
we became the actual mascot for Oakland, so we didn't need these personas because
Yeah.
we were the Grizz
Yeah.
at one point. So
Okay. So you said you had shirts. Do you still have these shirts?
I don't. I'm sure I would have grown out of it by now. You have to talk to Sean about his.
Hmm. I just it's just so funny to me to think of where Sean is now, being known as the Milkman, which I'm sure we'll have him on a podcast in the future,
Yeah,
as being the Kodiak Kid.
yeah, he's been through quite the journey.
It's what a time. What so what has kind of kept you with that name then? Like, obviously it's been what, 9 years to this point? Like what's kept you from wanting to change it? Is it the thought of just like memory of back then, or like what's kept that name for you?
Not a whole lot, honestly. Like, if I were to pick a different name, I probably could today or tomorrow and just make it an easy transition. But I feel like in our community, I guess you could say our gaming community, that's just like what people know me as.
Hmm.
So it's just easier to keep Bear Claw 613.
Yeah, and I mean, you even have had mottos that you've had over the years, right? Like, you've been mauled by the bear claw, so I feel like it fits. Um, and you've had your own stint with streaming as well, right?
Briefly, yeah, I haven't done it in a while. I also haven't said you've been mauled by the Bear Claw for a while, so maybe it's time to bring that back. But yeah, I briefly dabbled in streaming myself on YouTube because I didn't want to compete with your your Twitch. Um, and it wasn't really like I wasn't very passionate about it. It's just kind of like fun to do.
Yeah,
Good way to pass the time. Some people wanted to watch me play games when it's like a one player. So I was like, sure, I guess I'll stream for you.
yeah. I mean, I think that's what starts with a lot of people, right? Of streaming is having the sense that I'm playing games anyway. Like, might as well have people join in on a community. Like, there are people out there that enjoy watching other people play games. And I don't know if it's as much as wanting to watch other people play games as much as wanting to be able to interact with that person that's playing those games. Um, so I think that's an interesting point that you kind of bring up there is playing these story mode games, and we'll talk a little bit about that here in a little bit, but and having people join in that conversation, and part of that journey essentially with you in that, because they're not playing that game. So what's kind of stopped you from continuing with that? You said you weren't very passionate about it, you were just doing it for fun. So like,
Hmm.
do you still do it, or like do you still want to do it?
Like I said, I haven't done it in a while. I can't remember. It's been a couple months. But I was playing Sekiro,
Yeah.
that samurai game or ninja game, and I just was not having a good time playing that game. So maybe that's what turned me off. But yeah, I haven't found another game like a good story mode game that I felt like playing or streaming. So that's probably why. Maybe if I come up with something else,
Okay.
I might do it again. But we'll see.
So, I mean, you've kind of talked about already, like, not necessarily being passionate about games, right? So, like,
Yeah.
what is it that keeps you playing games? Like, why do you log in to play games every day?
Just to pass the time, really. Especially now, um, during the pandemic.
Hmm.
Everyone's staying inside, but yeah, just to pass the time, hang out with friends. Yeah.
Has that always been for you kind of that the sense of gaming? And I don't want you to answer that just yet, but in my last episode, in level one, I kind of talked about the three most important and impactful games that have kind of been a part of my journey. You know, I talked about Halo 2, I talked about Fortnite, and I talked about Super Mario 64 or Mario 64. I never can remember the actual name. As kind of my three big gaming milestones for me. Do you have those for yourself?
I don't know if I would call them milestones, but definitely good memories attached to
Okay.
them. The first one being SmackDown versus Raw on the PlayStation 2. Um, just because I remember I used to live across the street from Sean.
Mm-hmm.
So whenever he would come over, we'd go down in my basement and play SmackDown versus Raw for hours. And also, like I said, I was late to the game with a lot
Mm-hmm.
of things when it comes to gaming. That includes memory cards. Like I didn't even understand the concept of that I needed a memory card until I got a PlayStation 2. Like when I was playing the PlayStation 1, like I would play a game, like turn it off. When I turned it back on, I'd be like, wait, I had to start from the beginning? Like, why do I have to start all over? I don't understand. So finally with the PlayStation 2, I got there's one of those small memory cards, and like you could save like your customizable
Yeah.
characters. So that's why I was a little more invested in it because it actually remembered what I was doing. But also because Sean would come over and we'd play two-player on that. Also along those same lines, MW3 on PlayStation 3. That was also like really the first time I played like online multiplayer. That's a good way. Like I said, I like playing games with my friends. So
Mm-hmm.
um, spending hours on that game online with you and some of our other college buddies. And then I mentioned I like story modes, so Arkham City. All the Arkham games I
Mm-hmm.
enjoyed for the most part, but Arkham City, I think I enjoyed the story on that the most. And again, I like superheroes, so
Yeah, and you know, I think a couple of the games that you mentioned, I think have are kind of where our timelines kind of intersect with each other, right? Like I think of MW3, like to my memory, like that is the first game that we ever played together. Um, and because I remember very distinctly that I like when I moved into college, like I had I think an Xbox 360, and so I would only play Halo with the people on my floor. And then I think it wasn't until you and I lived together that I bought a PS3 from somebody in the student union with Modern
I remember
Warfare
that. Yeah.
3, and then the rest is history. Like that's what we played. Um, and so I think that's kind of where we intersect. And like even with Arkham, like a great series, right? And like I
Hmm.
don't think I played that um, unless it was because of you, right? Because I think you're the one that first told me about them. Um, because I remember you talking about Asylum and then talking about
Yeah.
City. I didn't play Asylum. I jumped right into City and then into Night. Um, and still one of my favorite series of all times because it's just so great. Like I don't know. Um,
It's actually funny that you bring up Asylum because I didn't even play Asylum on my own console.
mm,
I had to go over to Sean's apartment and I played the entire Arkham Asylum game on his PS3. So when I got my own PS3 when I came to college, I was like, I definitely got to get Arkham City for my own console. I'm not gonna play on someone else's like I
right.
did last time.
Yeah. Like it's just it's crazy to think of like where gaming has come. I think even in our journeys. And so kind of on that topic and on that note, like what is your earliest gaming memory? Like what does that look like for you?
Yeah, it's funny. After I listened to your episode last week and I reached out to you, I was like, wow, we have vastly different
Mm-hmm.
experiences. Because my earliest gaming memories are very vague and blurry. I remember again vaguely having the N64, playing Mortal Kombat, just like hitting the same button over and over again,
Love
just like
that.
punching over and over and over again. Um, and probably winning by doing that too, which is cheap, but I'll take it. Um, and then also like Spider-Man and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, like those kind of games. Um, and but also at the same time, like even on the same level as an N64, I remember playing on the PC, um, Windows 95 or whatever. Um, Space Cadet Pinball,
Classic.
Ski Free. when you ski down the mountain and eventually the Yeti
Yeah.
would come and eat you. I remember that's my first raging memory because that fucking Yeti would always get you every time. Um,
The worst.
so yeah, like it's a blur, but like those were like on the same level, which is ridiculous to think about. Like, why would an N64 and a Windows 95 PC be on the same level of gaming? But I was always like the kind of kid who would rather be outside and
Mm-hmm.
play. I don't look like it, but again, I lived across the street from my best friends. So, like we'd
Yeah.
always go outside and play together. Until the PS2, and we would play in my basement. But yeah, so that's why we have vastly different gaming experiences when we were younger.
So, kind of going on a tangent, one of the things that you talked about was raging, right? Like ski free. I completely agree. Like I didn't really understand the game when I started playing it when I was younger. I was like, why am I just skiing down a mountain? And then where does this? How do I get away from the Yeti? So I get that. I get the raging point.
Right.
Do you think that your raging looks different today than it did then?
Well, I definitely swear a lot more. So there's that. But yeah, I don't know. I definitely don't rage as much as you do. Not to throw you under the bus.
That's fine.
But raging is just something like I'll rage at other things like that I know that I'm good at.
Mm-hmm.
But I know that I'm not good at video games, so like I'm not gonna be that invested into it. So that's why I don't rage as much. Sure, I get upset because you want to do well,
Mm-hmm.
I guess. But at the end of the day, I take a breath, like okay, yeah, like obviously I lost because I'm not good at this. So
So I think you bring up a good point. You know, like I think with raging, and this goes into a question that I want to kind of talk about that I've talked about um, in other uh, episodes that I want to focus on down the line. Um, but do you think that video games has a negative impact on mental health of people that spend a lot of time playing them? Right, like you have seen in the past that people in the news have claimed that video games have been the leading cause for why there's school shootings or X, Y, and Z happen. Do you think that there's a negative correlation there between gaming and mental health?
I don't think that there is. Um, I'm not an expert. Like I don't really know if there is or not. I don't think there is, because I feel like it's just so temporary. Like I said, like you might rage in the moment,
Mm-hmm.
but like once you take a breath, like it's totally fine. I think that I mean you use the word passionate a lot whenever you rage.
Mm-hmm.
You just get passionate about the game. That's why you get upset. But I think that because video games are so visible now with like streaming and whatnot, um, people are watching professionals rage,
Mm-hmm.
and they think there's a level of toxicity to that.
Mm.
Um, so there's a fine line between passion and toxicity. So you might misperceive passion as toxicity. So there could be an issue there. But besides maybe raising your blood pressure while you rage, I don't think there is a correlation between video games and mental health.
So, kind of going off of that, like you talked about the difference between passion and toxicity, right? Or rate, whatever that looks like. So obviously we see a lot of that in gaming and in professional gaming, right? Like a lot of professional gamers these days are like 15 years old, right? And like at times it comes off as being toxic, right? When they're being emotional about, you know, something that happened in the game that they could have done better, or they get mad at themselves, or mad at something in the game that they feel like could have gone differently, right? So do you think there's a difference between being competitive and showing your emotions in that, and just like blaming it on something that's out of your control? Does that make sense? So like obviously
I think so.
there's gonna be a little bit of a difference, but do you think there's a way to kind of combat that, or things that people can do differently in that kind of moment or situation?
Well, it's interesting because when you think about professional sports, I think maybe Odell Beckham Jr. is a prime example. Um, Whenever he rages, people say that that's toxic. But like obviously he's a great wide receiver and he's competitive. So like that's why he probably rages when he doesn't do as well because he knows he's good at the game and he
Mm-hmm.
should have done better. Um, so I think it's the same with video games. Really, I know some people might not want to compare video games to IRL sports, whatever you want to call it. But there, I don't know if there's a way to combat that. If you're passionate about something and you know you're good at it,
Mm-hmm.
when you don't do well, like you're gonna get upset. So I don't know if there's a way to combat that or not.
Yeah, because I think about, as funny as it is, like when you and I went to the Fortnite World Cup last year, um, in July, um, crazy thing, it was a year ago. Like there, you could see like the frustration on some of these players' faces, right? Like I think of one of the younger players, Skeptic, who in the middle of a battle, L danced on the people he was going up against, and then immediately got destroyed by another team, right? And there was obviously frustration there. So I think back to moments like that. Would he have done something differently? Did he like? Do you think that the age that some of these competitors are at, they don't recognize a growth mindset for them? Like okay, like this is something I can fix, or do you think it's there? They just show it in a almost like a different way.
I don't know if that's a good example. Or not. He wasn't really raging when he was doing the L dance.
Right.
He was kind of just being a sore winner, I guess, and he suffered the consequences of doing the L dance. But yeah, I don't know. Like I said, younger kids are watching these streamers rage,
Mm-hmm.
being toxic or whatever. So as much as this probably ages me, that I guess that they are at the age where they're more impressionable. So
Yeah.
when they see professionals do that, that's normalized, I guess. So they're more likely to do it themselves. I don't know if I'm really answering the question at all.
I think you are. I just think that it's so interesting when you think of like professional sports, right? You think of like professional greats like Michael Jordan or LeBron, and you think of like the age range that professional athletes are, right? Like they're in their 20s at least, 20s to 40s. And then you look at these esports professionals who are like 13 to 20. So it's a very different, not only generation, but a very different group and dynamic that you're working with where they haven't experienced a lot in their lives. But here they are, like being on main stages, like playing for millions of dollars, and not necessarily
Those are nice.
understanding like their actions right along the way. And I think that's from what I've seen, especially with Fortnite, like that's where a lot of people get frustrated because their brand is teenage kids, right? And so I think that's a lot where that rage comes from that you've kind of talked about is not necessarily knowing or having the capacity yet to understand what their actions are. And again, like I rage all the time. Like if people have watched the stream, they've seen me rage. I've said things that I don't necessarily mean or would say in person, but it's just like the first thing that comes to my mind when
Huh.
when shit's happening.
Yeah, we can review some of the things you said if you'd like.
No, there's you've already made videos of the stuff that JC with the shot says, which is on this YouTube as well. So if you haven't watched those, go feel free to watch those. Um, but to kind of come back from that tangent, and I want to kind of wrap up here. Um, one of the things like that I would love to do, and I would love to have you back on the podcast to kind of talk about this, is you've talked about story games kind of being your motif, if you will. I don't even know if that's the right word for that.
Motif. Okay.
um, or kind of your niche, right? Like you enjoy those games, and I would love to kind of come back and talk about some characters in gaming history that you've either connected with or found characteristics that you really enjoy and kind of the impact that they've had on you. I know that you haven't said that you've said that you're not necessarily passionate about gaming, but I think even in those times that we play those games, we gain something from the people that we're playing as or playing with. So I'd love to have that conversation with you in another podcast because that's something I'm going to, I think, explore myself. So with that kind of being said, I want to kind of give you, a little bit here to kind of plug anything that you're working on, anything that you got going on right now.
I don't have a lot going on.
Hmm.
I guess you can follow me on TikTok. That's where I'm currently creating content.
Okay.
At Wake Up Frank, same as my Twitter and Instagram handle. So follow me on any of those socials.
Okay. Yeah, so drop him a follow. I'll put his description and stuff down in the bio, in the description of this video as well. But Frank, I do want to thank you for coming on and being the first guest on Leveling Up. It has been a pleasure. Round 2 of this has gone great. It's been a little bit of a different conversation than the first one we had earlier, but thank you so much for coming on. Hope to have you on again. And
Sure.
that being said, I'll probably be playing with you and hearing from you in a little bit
Probably.
as we play games.
It's about
But
that time, yeah.
you know, if you made it through the video, please like, subscribe, and share. Comment down below what your favorite part of this video was, or something that stuck out to you. And thank you again. We'll be back next Friday with another guest as well, or another player 2,
Ooh.
as we kind of continue along this journey, having some more conversations. So from me to all of you, I hope you have a great day. Frank, thanks again for coming on, spending this time with me. And for those all of you out there, stay safe during all of this. Stay well, stay home, and hope to see you all next week.